Hello, friends. It gives me great pleasure to speak to you today in the World Bronchiectasis Congress. I would like to thank the Congress organizers for providing this platform to me to present some of our data from the Indian Bronchiectasis Registry. The topic given to me today is to talk about the role of registries. So I'll start off talking about how this idea of having an Indian registry germinated, the obstacles we faced in going forward, the data we generated, and then maybe finish off talking about how this data was important for us in showing us how management of bronchiectasis was different in an Indian perspective as compared to what it is for the rest of the world. So interestingly, the idea germinated as a part of a corridor conversation with Dr. James Chalmers. So I met Dr. James Chalmers in the ERS International Congress of 2014 in Munich and post one of his talks on the EMBARK study, the European EMBARK study. I had a conversation with him where I expressed an interest to start off an Indian registry on similar lines. The conversation lasted all of 10 minutes, but it was there that this idea of having an Indian registry germinated. We took this forward on future conversations, sometimes on the virtual platform, sometimes telephonic consultations. And once the idea had been floated, I brought it back to my colleagues in India for further discussion. It was exciting times. I found this idea very exciting, but it took a little while to convince my Indian colleagues that this was an exciting idea. Disease registries, especially in respiratory medicine, was not something which we had done often before. And one of the questions that I got asked was, why bronchiectasis? Why not something like asthma? Why not something like COPD, which we saw more of, which was maybe of greater importance to a developing country as compared to bronchiectasis. We discussed the idea that this was no longer an orphan lung disease, the fact that we saw it a lot and maybe saw it even more in the perspective of post-TB bronchiectasis. The fact that a registry was required was something people gradually got convinced over a period of 6 months to 1 year. India, you would agree, is a big country. And if we wanted to do a disease registry, we wanted to make sure that every part of the country would be equally represented. If you think about the population of this country, we are at the moment at about 138 crores. Compare that with all of Europe, which is about 75 crores. So unless we had representation from the north, the east, the west, and the south of the country, we could never claim that this would be a pan-Indian registry. And this was in itself challenging because the degree of training, the degree of expertise in bronchiectasis was variable across the country. The other thing which was very variable was the quality of imaging, the quality of CT scans that we had across the country. CT scan was one diagnostic modality which was thought to be compulsory in the diagnosis of bronchiectasis as a part of our registry. And it took us a while to ensure that at least the diagnostic modality, the HRCT scan, was acceptable at the centers which we chose as partner centers for the Bronchiectasis India registry. There were other discussions which we had, prolonged discussions. Who to include, which centers to include, which patients to include. Should the patient cohort be exactly similar to what had been done in Europe? And after much thought, we thought that we had to have comparable data from across continents and from across countries, and hence the data recording was pretty similar across the European and the Indian registry. The next question, especially pertinent for India, was whether to include post-TB bronchiectasis or not. This was a hotly debated topic. A lot of people, based on the pathophysiology of the disease, the pathogenesis of the disease, thought that post-TB bronchiectasis was a different beast altogether. However, we had seen from previous EMBARK registries and other bronchiectasis studies that post-TB bronchiectasis often behaved at least partly similarly to what other etiological diagnoses of bronchiectasis did. And hence, eventually, we decided that post-TB bronchiectasis would be an important cohort to include in an Indian population. So if we included post-TB bronchiectasis, would we include other causes of traction bronchiectasis, ILD being an example? Again, we discussed this long and hard, and we thought that interstitial lung disease was definitely something which was more traction, more related to airway dilatation related to fibrosis, and hence this would be something we would exclude from our cohort of patients. Again, we were replicating something which had happened in other EMBARK registries and other bronchiectasis studies in the past. Clinical studies, registry formation in India is still in its primitive era, and hence entering data, uniformity of data to be maintained across various sites was something which was a challenge. And hence a lot of training from the primary investigator center, hence from our center, was something which was mandated and took us a while to ensure that the research associates in various centers were up to speed with recording data that was needed for EMBARK India. We wanted to make sure that centers were proactive in recruiting patients. They would put patients down only if there was something that they got as a result. And hence, we made recruitment competitive. We made sure that authorship for future papers was something which would depend on the number of people, the number of patients recruited. We had also planned as a part of EMBARK India to have a 5-year follow-up, and a big stumbling block which we're still facing going forward with EMBARK is following up these patients in the long term. In places like India, where government and private setups run parallelly, follow-up of patients in the long term is a huge challenge. Recording information and storing it is a big challenge, and hence follow-up of patients was a big stumbling block for us going forward in this registry. Hence, with all these challenges, all these stumbling blocks, as I have pointed out, there was a lot of hand-holding. And I have to thank Dr. James Chalmers repeatedly for having handheld us through this entire exercise of EMBARK India. There was a lot of people from my center in Kolkata who helped in hand-holding the various centers, at least in the initial 3 to 4 months after we started recruitment. A lot of team members, my juniors, our clinical research associate worked hard, worked tirelessly to make sure that the hand-holding exercise for other centers was appropriate, and I would want to thank them for this. Training of centers was online, and I've said we started off with training centers as to how to record data. We wanted to maintain some degree of uniformity as far as reporting scans was concerned, and hence there was a discussion between radiologists at various centers to make sure they understood the recording of CT scan reports as being more or less uniform across various centers. So was there a template? Was there anything that we were replicating from our previous experience with disease registries? And there was only one that we could fall back upon, one which was the ILD India registry. So very quickly, the ILD India registry was started in 2012 and completed in 2015. And this had about 1,100 patients who were enrolled across the length and breadth of the country, 27 investigators from 19 cities. And you can see these 19 cities dotted across the length and breadth of India. There was also a coordinating center, which was Seattle in Washington, and the data got looked at with the primary investigator center in Jaipur, and then again at the Washington Seattle Center with Dr. Ganesh Raghu's team. So the reason I'm relating this story was that this was a successful project. This was a project which resulted in a publication in the Blue Journal. And a lot of us, including myself, were a part of the ILD India registry. And hence, we used that experience, replicated some of that experience into the Bronchiectasis India registry. So the first hurdle was recruitment of centers for this particular registry. And you can see that we did a reasonably good job in representing a country of 138 crores. The north, the west, the south, and the east of the country all had significant representation in this registry, and hence it could be called a pan-Indian registry. I won't go into the details of how the study was set up because this, as I said, was not very different to the European EMBARK study. Suffice to say that there were 31 participating centers. The 2,000 odd patients that we had was the largest Asian bronchiectasis data set, and it helped to illustrate the geographic variation which was inherent in this disease and the inter-patient variability. Recruitment continued from 1st of June 2015 to 1st of September 2017. The baseline data was collected and the follow-up data was thought to be a minimum of once per year. And every facet of bronchiectasis was recorded. So you can see the list on there, the demographics, the comorbidities, and we go on to microbiology, radiology, treatment, physiotherapy, etc. The Indian registry, like we said, was designed in a way that it could be compared with the European, the US, and the other disease registry. And we are writing up papers now looking at the global data together and trying to identify the differences in data across various continents and various countries. So in the next 5 minutes, I'll flip through a few slides showing you some of the results of what we did. So the mean age for the Indian data set was 56 years. We are one of the only countries which had a male predominant disease, non-smokers being most commonly affected. The most common cause, the frequent cause of bronchiectasis in our country, expectedly was post-TB bronchiectasis, which accounted for about 35.5% of the 2195 patients in the registry. Post-infectious bronchiectasis came in second, and idiopathic bronchiectasis came in third. ABPA, interestingly, was 9%. However, tests for identification of ABPA was done only in a few patients, and 50% of patients who got tested had ABPA. So the point I'm trying to make is that ABPA likely is a far more prevalent disease in the Indian registry compared to the 9% that we have quoted as a part of the EMBARK India publication. One would think that with post-TB bronchiectasis being the most common cause, there would be much more of upper lobe bronchiectasis. This was, however, not the case, and the upper, middle, and lower lobes were equally represented, as you see in the cartoon on the right on that slide. Cystic dilatation, interestingly, was the most common pattern, and we also found that post-TB bronchiectasis was more of the cystic variety, which in part explained why this was the most common pattern in EMBARK India. You can see that the other patterns, cylindrical and varicose, were represented in smaller numbers in the EMBARK India registry. The frequency of all exacerbations was 1.15 per year. However, the number of severe exacerbations necessitating hospital admission was quite high at 0.55 per year. If you look at spirometric pattern, obstructive, restrictive, and normal were more or less represented in equal numbers across the board. However, what was fascinating was that a low FVC variety, hence the restrictive pattern, was more common in post-TB bronchiectasis phenotype. And this was across the board in all parts of the country. Patients who had airflow obstruction seemed to have more of fixed airflow obstruction on post-bronchodilator spirometry. So these were two important spirometric patterns which were important to point out. About 60% of patients at least had one sputum sample taken in the year before baseline visit. Even in our data set, Pseudomonas aeruginosa was found as the most common bacteria, most common infection in about 14% of patients. There were other Enterobacteriaceae species, E. coli, Klebsiella, Acinetobacter, etc., which were found in smaller percentage of patients. Some of the bacteria found in the European cohort, the H. influenzae, the Moraxella catarrhalis, the Staph aureus, were found in much smaller numbers. The other interesting part of the Indian cohort was that sputum production daily was something which was not found in 60% of the patients. So 58% of the patients did not have significant sputum production on a daily basis, which is interesting and maybe to an extent reflects post-TB bronchiectasis, but also the social mindset of people where spitting seems to be something which is taboo in modern India. If you looked at the severity index based on the bronchiectasis severity index, severe disease, like we talked about in exacerbations, also in baseline disease, severe disease was the commonest, but mild and moderate bronchiectasis was also well represented. If you looked at treatment, we did not treat our patients with bronchiectasis very well. A large number of our cohort, more than 60% of patients, were on inhaled corticosteroids. A lot of patients, more than 50% of patients, were on a fixed combination of an inhaled corticosteroid and a long-acting beta agonist. Hence, we treated our patients with bronchiectasis, all of them or most of them, as airways obstruction, even though the spirometry did not suggest that, like I showed you a little while ago. NAC was the most common mucolytic drug. Other drugs used in obstructive airways disease, COPD and asthma, like theophylline, leukotriene receptor antagonists, seem to be used significantly. The use of airway clearance techniques, use of mucoactive drugs. So airway clearance technique wasn't too bad at about 40%. We've talked about the use of a lot of bronchodilator and inhaled corticosteroids. The evidence-based treatment, the low-dose macrolide, the inhaled antibiotic, etc., were all used in less than 10% of cases. So that's our data set. Our success was publication of the bronchiectasis India registry in the Lancet Global Health. You can see the article on that particular slide, a publication that we were all very proud of. The disappointment in the data was in trying to phenotype these patients into clusters. I don't need to talk to these patients about what the definition of phenotyping is, but when we tried to put these patients in clusters, with the initial 600 patients, we seem to have clear clusters. So I'm showing you with the first 600 odd patients, cluster 1 was the young male with a normal spirometry, moderate exacerbations, few hospitalizations, and low positive bacteriology. On the other hand, cluster 2, elderly female, supranormal spirometry, not much of exacerbations, no hospitalization, but more than average positive cultures. However, when we did the 2195 patients, the clusters were no longer as well defined as the Western population from the Friends database that James and his colleagues have published. Our clustering seemed to be more on the basis of demographics, BMI spirometry, but we did not extend till the 2195 patients we had. So we thought that our clustering was more based on etiological diagnosis, and we ended up with clusters which looked at infective and idiopathic being one of the clusters, male predominant, high percentage of ex-smokers, post-TB bronchiectasis with cystic disease being a definite type, low FVC restrictive spirometry in this group, low-dose macrolides, etc., being important. Cluster 2 being the ABPA and asthma phenotype, which was female preponderant, mildly symptomatic disease and spirometry, less sputum, and little or no antibiotic use. And cluster C was the COPD bronchiectasis overlap, male predominant disease, more severe, more exacerbations prone disease, again with little use of antibiotics. The last 2 minutes, I'll speak about comparison of the Indian and the European data. So the Indian patients were younger, They were more men. They had lower body mass index, less of comorbidities except diabetes, which is expected with India being the diabetic capital of the world. They were more likely to have more severe disease with a BSI, which was higher in the severe range, extensive cystic radiological disease being the most common type. Outpatient exacerbations were less common, but hospitalizations were more frequent. The FEV1 percentage as a whole was lower in the Indian population. The microbiology data for us was much more limited. However, we did show that Pseudomonas continued, like the Western population, to be the most common bug, but bugs like H. influenzae, Moraxella, etc., were far rarer in the Indian population of patients. Patients with bronchiectasis were treated similar to patients with COPD, with less use of evidence-based treatment like low-dose macrolides, inhaled antibiotics, etc. And that's one thing that needs a lot of changing in the Indian population. Hence, I conclude by saying that it was an honor and a privilege to be a part of the single largest bronchiectasis registry, so single country largest bronchiectasis registry in the world. It was a learning experience for all of us. It was teamwork, even in a disease which had previously been termed as an orphan lung disease. I think this impetus has stayed with us, and we are collecting follow-up data, and we look forward to future publications. Experience of this disease registry will have a very positive impact in future disease registries throughout the country, and we look forward to further publications in this space. Thank you very much for listening to me.